Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and thank you for joining me for another true crime video. And before we get into all of the true crime stuff, I want to introduce you to somebody, the newest member of my family. This is Alfie. He's a miniature golden doodle puppy. He is so sweet and he's just a little love fluff ball. He's going to be with us today while we record the video so that he's not peeing all over my house while I'm in my recording booth. Also, I like having him with me. So everyone say hi to Alfie in the comments. Hi, Alfie. Welcome to the Harlowe family. He's so freaking cute. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Okay, let's get into the depressing stuff, the sad stuff, the stuff we're here to talk about, the infuriating stuff, because today we're continuing on with the Mica Miller case. And I'll give everyone a brief summary to catch you up, but if you haven't seen part 1 yet, you definitely need to because 1 always comes before 2. Not much of this is going to make sense if you don't watch part 1. On April 27, 2024, the body of 30-year-old Mica Miller was found deep in Lumber River State Park in Orem, North Carolina. The Robeson County Sheriff's Department announced that Mica's death had been the result of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Mica's death had come just a week after she'd filed for a legal separation from her husband, John Paul Miller, who was also the pastor at a Myrtle Beach, South Carolina church called Solid Rock. When I say he was, I don't mean to refer to that in past tense. He's still the pastor at Solid Rock. He's the founder of Solid Rock. So in the months and the weeks leading up to her death, Mica had gone to the police multiple times to report that her husband had been stalking her, harassing her, and he'd placed a tracker in her vehicle. And Mica's family has been very vocal since her death that they do not believe she did this to herself, and that she was scared of her husband, John Paul, or JP, as we're going to refer to him throughout this video. She was scared that she would never be able to actually get a divorce from him, that she'd never actually be able to get away from him, because she might not live long enough to see that dream realized. So today we're going to go over the timeline of the day Mica died, and then we're going to talk about JP Miller and what he got himself into after her death, and why Mica's loved ones feel that JP is somehow involved in why Mica is no longer alive. But first, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, GlassesUSA.com. I've worn glasses since I was 2 years old, and as an adult, I can either look at it as something that I have to do, or I can look at it as an opportunity to express myself while, also seeing clearly, which is kind of important. I love the way that I can change my glasses to complement my look, my outfit, the situation, the event, even my mood, but I hate the whole process of picking out and purchasing glasses in the store because it can be extremely overwhelming and stressful. There's so many options. There's so many people there. You kind of feel rushed. You want to get in. You want to get out. It's just a little bit stressful. At GlassesUSA.com, though, their mission is to change the way we purchase glasses. GlassesUSA.com was created on one simple belief, that eyewear shouldn't break the bank, and so they allow people to shop for and purchase glasses from the comfort and convenience of their own homes, and they offer a wide array of high-quality frames and lenses at economical prices with a risk-free shopping experience. GlassesUSA.com is one of the biggest eyewear retailers in the U.S., and that's probably why I've gotten all my glasses from them for the past 4 years. They offer thousands of eyeglasses and sunglasses such as Ray-Ban, Gucci, Oakley, and many more. And what's best about GlassesUSA.com is that their glasses start at only $39, which are up to 70% off of retail prices. That's why I can have so many glasses. But I can have so many glasses because the prices are so reasonable. One of my favorite parts of using GlassesUSA.com is how easy they make it to find and virtually try on different frames. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the amount of choices, as I always do, you can just take a simple quiz that only takes you about 1 minute to complete, and then they will show you and suggest to you pairs of glasses that are going to fit your needs and your face shape. And with their AR virtual try-on tool, you can then upload a picture of yourself and then virtually try on each of these frames to see the ones that suit you best. And it's surprisingly accurate and very easy to use, and you can do it all while sitting on your couch and watching some terrible reality TV show that is your escape show. and drinking a glass of wine while getting your new glasses. Also, shopping online with GlassesUSA.com is a risk-free experience with free shipping and returns and a 100% money-back guarantee within 14 days. So the frames I'm wearing right now, these are the Amelia E. Ariel, and I've been loving these lately. I love the unique shape, the pop of blue on my face against my very pale complexion. I just like the way they look. I like that you can see my eyebrows and the frames aren't like huge, so they're covering my eyebrows and you only see half of my eyebrows, but I really, really like these. I've been in a very big blue mood lately. And summer's here, so I'm wearing sunglasses constantly when I'm outside because even if there's no sun, the wind makes my eyes water. It's terrible. I love these Ray-Ban cockpit frames so much. I feel so cool. I feel kind of like super 80s. I love them. I love the darker brown on top and then how it kind of gradiates down to a lighter brown. I love these so much, and I'll tell you, I never wear gold because I don't think it flatters my skin, but I think these do. I love them. However, I also have a pair of Ray-Bans from Glasses USA. These are the Ray-Ban Ericas in blue. These have been like my favorite pair of sunglasses for so long. These may be a contender for my favorite sunglasses, but I love these. In fact, I love them so much that when I lost them in the ocean in the Bahamas a few years back, I came right home and ordered the exact same pair because I love them so much. And like I said, I've been in a very blue mood lately, not like a sad mood, but like I love the color blue right now. And these are an older pair of glasses. These are the Amelia E. Chardonnay in blue and clear, and I love these so much. I've had these for a few years, and I think that they're awesome. I think that they are light, they're comfortable, they don't hurt my head. They're perfect to watch TV at night in when you're in bed because they don't push and hurt on my head. I love the way they fit, and I know I've had these for a while, but Glasses USA still has them, and they have been one of my favorites for about 2 years now. At this point, I probably have almost 100 pairs of GlassesUSA.com glasses that I've collected and bought over the past 4 years. And I'll insert a picture here if I remember to. But all of the frames are incredibly well-made, high quality, sturdy. I have not had issues with any of them. In fact, I rarely even have to get them adjusted. And I like that I can add the blue light blocking to any of the glasses I purchase from GlassesUSA.com because I'm on the computer so much, my phone so much. I'm always researching, always writing, or I'm filming in front of, my computer. So I love that option. And right now, GlassesUSA.com is offering a crazy exclusive discount on top of any coupon code they currently have on their website just for my followers. It's only available for 24 hours, so click fast at the top of my description box to get all of the details. Once again, if you're in the market for new eyeglasses or you're purchasing new sunglasses with the summer coming up fast, all you have to do is click the links in my description box. Take advantage of this exclusive 24-hour deal from GlassesUSA.com. Thank you so much to GlassesUSA.com for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive in. Before we start, I do want to shout out another channel, another true crime creator, Grizzly True Crime. I'm going to be using some of the footage that she received from a FOIA request. And besides the fact that I'm using some of her footage, I do want to say that I believe wholeheartedly that Grizzly True Crime does a great job with every single case she covers. I don't watch a lot of true crime creators anymore because, it's all I do. But Grizzly True Crime, I do watch her. She reminds me a lot of myself. I can tell she likes to get to the bottom of things. She wants to know everything about each victim that she covers, the circumstances around what happened to them. I like her voice. I like the way her brain works. I like how thorough she is. All of that to say, you should check her out if you haven't already. Thank you so much to her for sending that FOIA request and getting all of this video footage and all of this information for us to use to understand better what happened to Mica. I have linked her channel in the description box. Go check her out, say hi, and you will not be disappointed. So let's go to Saturday, April 27th, 2024, and follow along with Mica Miller's movements that day. At 10:13 that morning, Mica left her home located at 2323 Margarita Drive, Unit 513 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. She returned at 11 a.m. with what looks like an iced coffee and a bag of food. Around 11:30 a.m., Mica leaves her apartment again.
Sleeping is over. So when I get into this and I start to look at what the scriptures say, I came across this passage, and here it is. You might remember the song by the Birds, turn to everything. There's this eagle. Speaking of necessary endings, your life of sleeping is over. So when I get into this and I start to look at what the scriptures say, I came across this passage, and here it is. You might remember the song about the birds? Turn, turn, turn to everything. There's a season.
You can hear that Mica's listening to something on her phone, like a podcast or something, as she leaves her apartment. And Grizzly True Crime has helpfully notated what that audio that we can hear in this clip was. It's called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. Cloud is a clinical psychologist and best-selling author, and his book, Necessary Endings, is supposed to teach people how to break free from relationships and situations that are holding them back. According to Cloud, endings are an inevitable and often beneficial part of life, a crucial part if you want to grow and change. But for new healthy patterns to begin, old and unproductive patterns need to end. Dr. Cloud does acknowledge that this isn't easy. Breaking things off can be difficult and uncomfortable, but you have to learn to get comfortable with it. So it's really not surprising to me that Mica was listening to this. It does feel like something you would listen to when you were going through a hard breakup or a contentious divorce, as she was. However, it does make me feel like, would somebody who was about to take their own life within hours be listening to a podcast talking about starting over, breaking free from toxic patterns, starting over, and living a healthier life, a mentally healthier life? Now, some people mentioned that it looked as if Mica was dressed to go to work. She worked at J. Peter's Grill and Bar in Myrtle Beach, but she didn't go to work that day, even though she was scheduled that afternoon. Instead, Mica went to a place called Dick's Pawn Shop in Myrtle Beach, located at 1852 Mr. Joe White Avenue, and she went there to purchase a gun. She arrived at 12:12 p.m., she was at the register a minute later, and she left at 12:34 p.m. Next, Mica traveled along Highway 501 to 41 Grocery and Grill. This is a gas station in Mullins, South Carolina, and she arrived there at 1:27 p.m. She purchased gas and an energy drink for $25 and then left at 1:35 p.m. That day, Mica had searched the internet for National Park near me twice, and her next destination would be Lumber River State Park in Orem, North Carolina, which was about 32 miles away from the gas station. It should have taken her about 40 to 45 minutes to drive there, and we obviously aren't exactly sure when she arrived at the park, but we know she called 911 at 2:54 p.m.
Robertson County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hi, are you able to trace the location of my phone?
Let me see. You don't know where you're at?
In National Park.
What's the phone number you're calling me from?
843-655-5242.
Where's the park located at?
In Bear Bluff. I have my location on, I think, on my phone. Find my phone is on. I just did my my location.
Okay, I'm showing, I don't think you are in Robertson County. Are you at the Lumber River State Park?
Yeah, that's where I am.
Tell me what's happened.
I'm about to kill myself, and I just want my family to know where to find me.
Okay, ma'am. Just listen to what I'm saying, okay? Let me make sure I got the exact location where you're at, okay? Just 1 minute.
Now, Mica had disconnected the call at that time because I believe she'd heard everything she needed to, that the 911 dispatcher knew her location and was able to trace the call. The dispatcher had used something called Rapid SOS to locate Mica, and at 3:03 p.m., Robeson County Sheriff's Office deputies were dispatched to Lumber River State Park to perform a well-being check and to locate Mica Miller. 2 minutes later, law enforcement made contact with the park superintendent, and at 3:20 p.m., the deputies requested a phone ping so that they could narrow down Mica's possible location. At 3:33 p.m., the sheriff's office drone was dispatched to the park, and at 3:42 p.m., the 911 dispatcher contacted Verizon to request that phone ping. Right at this same time, detectives located Mica's black Honda Civic in the parking lot of the park, and when they looked inside, they saw a black Sig Sauer gun case in the passenger seat and a box of ammunition in the center console. While conducting the aerial search with the drone, law enforcement was approached by a man who said he had been fishing when he'd come across a purse with Mica Miller's identification inside. This man also mentioned that while he had been in the water fishing, he'd heard crying and then a gunshot, which is what caused him to go further into the slough. And that is when he located Mica's purse 2 feet away from the edge of the water. Now, I didn't know what sloughs were, so I had to look it up. They're shallow areas of water that can be found along river edges.
I heard a cry back when I came in, where I told you I started hearing the crying at. Then I heard a gunshot. That was probably about 2 minutes or so after I started hearing the cry. It might have been a little bit longer than that. And I heard a gunshot. It wasn't a loud gunshot, and then the crying just stopped. Right about here, that's when I heard the gunshot. The gunshot went off.
From which side? Over here on the left?
To the left. That's where I heard the gunshot.
In there?
Uh-huh. That's when the crying stopped. That looks totally different from when I came in here. Anyway.
Was it low water when you were here?
No, it was actually less water than what's in here now. So that's the area I went in through with my boat.
How do you get in there if you're not in a boat?
You can't get in there if you. What do you mean?
How was she in there?
There's a path that comes in there. That's what I told them. Yeah. There was a path that comes into here. So there's paths all in this river, and there was a path leading straight to where her belongings were laying at.
And then how did you come across her stuff, her belongings?
I just seen it laying up on the bank when I pulled up in here. Yes, sir. It was laying up on the bank. I don't know why I grabbed it. I just grabbed it. Didn't ever look at it or nothing. I got out and I looked around because there was a clearing on the left and the right, and I looked around because I felt like something was wrong, but I never seen nothing. I took the stuff, put it in my boat, went back to the landing. Her driver's license, her bank card, she had her keys, $500, a little over $500. Every bit of that money got back.
It was not a wallet? It was a wallet?
It was what they call, I guess, ladies call them fanny packs.
At 4:23 p.m., another man fishing in a kayak called 911.
Okay, I'm in Princess Anne State Park, and I just made contact with a deputy. I didn't get his name. I think I just found a body in the water down there. If you know which deputy is here, if you can tell him back to where he just talked to the guy, white male, orange T-shirt, in a kayak, he'll know where I'm at.
Okay, hold on 1 second for me, okay?
Okay.
The law enforcement officials who were looking for Mica went to the location the caller had given and secured the area before continuing their search. By 5:45 p.m., the chief of detectives, along with a CSI technician and the medical examiner, were all at the location. And by 7:33 p.m., they had located Mica's body with a single gunshot wound to the head. They also found the gun in the water near her body. Now, Mica's family did go to the spot where her body was found after her death, and apparently it was quite a hike from where she'd parked her car to where she ended up, and much of that walk would have been through knee-deep water. It's very remote and very out of the way. News Nation reported, quote, to get to the location where Mica Miller's body was discovered, her family had to walk down 2 separate trails, walk through knee-deep water, and climb through mud, trees, and fallen debris, end quote. Additionally, and reportedly, Mica's body was about 40 meters away from where her belongings were found. The gun was also found near Mica's body. Now, the following day, Mica's husband, J.P. Miller, gave a moving sermon, or at least I'm sure he thought it was moving. I'm sure he intended for it to be moving. And right at the end, after standing there and talking, normally for an extended period of time, laughing and joking and joshing around, dropping his little dad jokes all over, JP dropped the news on his congregation that Mica was gone.
A little bit, because I don't want to I'm taking a little bit of a break, and I don't want to have to worry about the church. My break may be a few days, a few weeks, I don't know. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina. And we're going to have a funeral for her next Sunday here at 3 p.m. And so it's all I can, I'm just kind of going on adrenaline right now. So y'all pray for me and my kids and everybody. And y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally, and that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her.
Now, it's strange that not only did JP announce Mica's passing, but he claimed that he'd been told it was self-induced, as he put it. And this was the very next morning. Before there'd been any time for an investigation. And the police may have told JP, we found her with a gunshot wound in her head. And then he took it upon himself to tell the congregation that it was self-induced, meaning Mica had taken her own life, because he's already trying to set a narrative before there was even any time for an investigation to happen and for the police to actually have a determination of what happened to Mica. Not only that, but JP helpfully slips in that Mica had mental health issues. Like I said, some might call this tactic setting a narrative, right? Some might call this tactic getting ahead of the curve so that by the time the truth comes out or by the time details come out that might, contradict what he said or might not, completely support what he said, it's already in people's heads. Now, according to attorney Regina Ward, who'd been helping Mica with her divorce and who's continued to represent Mica's family after her death, it was less about Mica not being mentally well and more about JP making her mentally unwell. And I totally get this. It is true that a toxic person, if you're around them long enough, if you give them enough access to you, they will drive you crazy. Now, the following statements from Regina Ward are simply that. Her statements, her beliefs. We here at Stephanie Harlowe, we're not accusing anyone of anything here. I'm just playing the clip for you to watch for yourself.
He claims that she was diagnosed with these mental illnesses and was on lithium. According to her, she didn't know she'd been diagnosed or what her medication was, because he always controlled the medication. He administered the medication. In fact, he has admitted that he would cut her pills up and give them to her if she refused to take the medication. Lithium, he has been diagnosed and admits it in a sermon. And if you look up lithium and the side effects of it, or if you take too much of it or you're over-medicated, you go into delirium. And that's what her demeanor reminded me of. Always on top of making sure she kept that medication. And that son of a bitch would inject her and her buttocks with testosterone, steroid shots.
What for?
Allegedly to enhance her libido. Moron. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. She was so brainwashed. He had been, I guess, quote, training her for a long time, and that how a wife is supposed to respond even to an abusive husband. There is a sermon that he gave. It was a series that he was doing, and this one, I want to say it was number 14, and it was called Discontentment. And in that sermon, about two-thirds the way through it, he talks about how that God says that it's a wife's duty to provide intimacy to the husband. That's her duty. And any time he asks for it, you better be complying. And, if you don't do what Jesus says to do, then you're sinning.
Now, I know what you're wondering. I know the burning question that you all have. Where was J.P. Miller at the time of Mica's death? We are going to talk about that. But first, I want to continue on in the timeline a bit further and bring you to May 1st, 2024, 4 days after Mica's death, when J.P. Miller was seen taking shots at a sushi restaurant in Myrtle Beach in the company of another woman who has since been identified as 49-year-old Susie Skinner, who, according to Solid Rock's website, acted as something called the Forge leader. And the Forge appears to be the church youth group. So I guess she was the youth group leader, which used to be JP's job, but now it's Susie's job. And according to a source at the restaurant, JP and Susie were laughing, drinking, having dinner. And the source said, quote, "I've seen him there a couple of times, with Mica too. She used to really like that restaurant. I was surprised to see him there so soon after her death and with another woman. It was like he didn't have a care in the world. He was kind of sloppy, drinking and laughing with the woman. They did a shot together before they left. He likes to drink martinis. It's well known around here that he's just not a nice guy, and I got a picture of him because I couldn't believe he was doing this so soon after her death," end quote. Yes, when people don't have self-awareness, when they live in a delusional reality of their own creation, they're going to do things that everyone on the outside is going to be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" But to them, they think it seems perfectly normal. 4 days is more than enough time to get over the death of your wife and be out drinking with another woman. Now, to be fair, according to Susie Skinner, she and JP do not have an intimate relationship. They've never had an intimate relationship. They're just friends, and she's helping him get through a hard time. Susie said that JP had asked several people to join him at the sushi restaurant that night, and she was the only one that could make it. But many people wonder about the patterns that JP has developed when it comes to women, when it comes to female members of his congregation and their husbands. So Chris Skinner was Susie's husband, and at the age of 20, he was injured and paralyzed from the neck down in a drunk driving accident, putting him in a wheelchair.
You know, there's not a day that goes by the last 18, 19 years where I don't think back and go, put your seatbelt on, man.
I'm gonna put this in that vertical zipper of your backpack where your meds are. Did you take your afternoon meds?
Yep. It was on a day just like today. I put my feet on the floor for the very, very last time, stood up, took a shower on my own for the very last time, went and dressed myself for the very last time. It was a day of many last times for me. I went to a wedding of a friend of mine, and when I went to the reception, I got intoxicated. Later that evening when we were driving, we were going 750 yards away when the vehicle flipped and was thrown out. I made a choice not to put a seatbelt on. You know, I tried to get up, just like we all think we're gonna do every day, you know, put our feet on the ground and get up. And I tried to move, I just couldn't move at all. Then I heard this noise and I look over and I saw my friend getting out on his hands and knees. And I was in the ditch, you know. And I remember when we made eye contact, it was the scariest eye contact I've ever felt in my life. He ran to me, got down on one knee, held my head, wiped the blood out of my mouth, and said the words that no 20-year-old should ever hear at that time. And he said, "Don't die on me, man."
Since Chris was injured 20 years ago, it's been his life's mission to use the mistakes that he made and the regrets that he has in order to create a testimony that has inspired countless people, one of whom is me. When I got on the internet in the spring of 2019, I noticed a Facebook post from Chris asking for assistance funding his effort to purchase what's called a TrackFab wheelchair. It's basically an ATV that allows its user to go to areas off-road in ways that their day-to-day wheelchair cannot.
I know how desperately you've wanted to be able to get back out here.
Yeah, I've been like
to the sand and the surf and to feel that wind in your face.
We're trying.
So I got you a TrackFab.
Holy cow.
You're going to be able to do that now. You're going to be able to come out to these adaptive surf events. You're going to be able to sit there with your beautiful children and your beautiful wife and feel that wind on your face. That's yours.
A year after this video was taken on September 6, 2021, 40-year-old Chris Skinner was discovered dead in a neighborhood pool in the Market area of Myrtle Beach, which happens to be the same area that the Solid Rock Church can be found in. He had drowned, and his death was ruled accidental. Now, apparently, Chris Skinner was no stranger to the water, even after his tragic accident. Chris had grown up being at the beach and surfing in the ocean, and when he became paralyzed, he took up adaptive surfing. And Luke Sharp, who's the director of the Adaptive Surf Project, he said, quote, "He was willing to put himself at risk for me to go surfing. I don't need any help. I can just grab a board and go into the water. For Chris, he had to trust a bunch of dudes and girls to take him surfing. If we didn't do it correctly, he would drown. He trusted us, and he did that. That really helped a lot of other people because people saw him surfing and doing adaptive surfing inspired others that would have been afraid to go out and trust us." End quote. Reportedly, on the day of his death, Chris Skinner was at the community pool by himself, and he did this often, I guess, but for some reason on that day, he did not survive. Now, J.P. Miller performed Chris Skinner's funeral service, and as usual, the service was filled with awkward jokes and questionable comments.
Anyway, Chris is an amazing man, and we're honored to be here today to celebrate his life. Another thing Chris is not in pain anymore, and that's because Revelation 21 says the streets are pure gold. God will wipe away all tears, and there will be no more death, no more crying, and no more what? Pain. No more pain, no more pain. And let me add to that, there'll be no more taxes. There'll be no more COVID. Where is that? There's no COVID. There's no Democrats or Republicans. Our Republicans, we're not going to be separated up there.
Like, who talks about politics during someone's funeral service? What is the point? There's enough about this man. He was inspiring. He's a motivational speaker. He overcame a tragedy that many people would never recover from. But we're going to talk about politics. Like, JP loves the attention on himself. JP loves the attention on himself. So Susie Skinner actually met Chris when he became a patient of hers at her physical therapy clinic after he was paralyzed, and they got married in 2004. About the accident that claimed his life, Susie said, quote, "Chris always went to the pool and walked his dog. If somebody was around, they would let him into the gate of the pool, and he would go in there all the time. That day, I guess when he was driving his wheelchair, nobody was there and he got too close to the edge and fell in." End quote. Along with much in this case, Chris Skinner's death has become a conspiracy theory, with people saying that Susie and JP possibly collaborated and contributed to Chris's death so they could get his money and then be together. Now, I can't speak on that since there's literally no evidence of such a thing, but reportedly, after Chris's death, Susie and JP did become close. They started spending a lot of time together. Now, it is possible that they're dating. It's even possible that they've been seeing each other for a while. They were seeing each other when Mica was still alive and JP was still married to Mica, but that's not a crime. That's not what we're here to talk about. But in Allison's motion for full custody, she did mention Susie, saying, quote, "Just 2 weeks prior to the incident, Chris's death, Susie's husband had confronted JP and asked him to leave his wife and children alone. It is chilling to know that the spouses of both Susie and JP are now dead from tragic events." End quote. I don't want to go too far down that path because, like I said, allegations, there's no proof, there's no evidence. Apparently, the police don't think there's anything to look into here, which, I mean, that's not saying much. Look what happened with Lori Vallow and Charles Vallow. How long did Charles Vallow's death get written off as an accident, as a self-defense thing? Until, Lori and Chad Daybell hooked up and started taking out everybody. And then the police were like, is this a pattern? But even if there's nothing to the allegations of foul play, it still does show a pattern of behavior. Because while JP was begging Mica to come back to him when he was promising her the world, he was investing time in other women and not just Susie Skinner. The February before Mica died, JP dined at a restaurant, and apparently he left a big tip for his waitress, but that's not all he left her.
A waitress in South Carolina shared this receipt with us from a customer she served on February 23rd. Look closely. You see the customer was John Paul Miller, JP Miller, as he's been called. He left that waitress a huge tip, along with his phone number and a smiley face. This was just 2 months before his wife, Mica, filed for divorce. The waitress, who we're referring to only by her first name, Christiana, reached out to John Paul a few days later and had a casual text exchange with him. Afterward, though, she hit the brakes, she says, after some red flags surfaced about him. And then, last week, after Mica killed herself, Christiana reached out to him yet again, not revealing that she'd made the connection between him and his wife. And she was surprised at his response, to say the least. Christiana joins us now. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Let's just get right to it. You most recently texted him after you heard his wife was dead. What surprised you about his response?
Honestly, it didn't really surprise me all that much. I kind of suspected that it wasn't going to be what you would expect from a grieving husband.
What did he say?
It was, well, I asked him if anything was new, and he more or less said, yes, lots new, LOL. I'll text later.
LOL? Laugh out loud?
Yes.
All right. And it's at that point that you said, okay, no more with this guy, right?
Actually, I was pretty aware of things from the beginning. I had some suspicions. There were some red flags. I did some research before I even texted him, and then after I did, I spoke with a friend of mine whose friend had a very negative experience, a mortifying experience, really, with him and his church.
What happened?
And that's her story to tell. I know that she witnessed some things that were not appropriate and faced some harassment when she tried to speak out about it.
So let's go back to, I want to show up that receipt again for that bill. When you waited on him, was he by himself?
He was with another man.
Okay, and we can see here the bill, he leaves you a $66, no, a $20 tip, is that what it is?
Yes, it was almost a 50% tip.
A 50% tip. Was it clear to you what he meant by leaving a tip like that and with his phone number and a smiley face?
With the phone number and the smiley face included, I think it was pretty clear.
He wanted you to call him.
I would assume that's the implication.
All right. Then you guys exchanged a couple text messages in which he repeatedly asks you to send pictures of yourself.
Yes.
Including bikini pictures, and he called you super hot.
Yes.
Okay. At this point, do you think he's a single guy? Do you know he's married? What do you know about him at this point?
A lot of the things especially after the point that I talked to my friend, I was well aware. I hadn't confirmed everything or all of my suspicions until I talked to my friend. But after that point, I was pretty aware of what was up. And I feel like we have a rampant problem in our country, and especially in our churches, with this type of behavior. And I feel that it needs to be brought to light. So I saw an opportunity and I took it.
You got an opportunity to try and get proof that he was propositioning other women while married to his wife.
And the fact that he was a pastor approaching people in this manner.
Yeah. Was there any doubt in your mind what he was asking you for?
No, not at all.
And did he ever ask to meet up with you, or did he just want you to send salacious pictures of yourself?
He mostly just seemed to ask for pictures. He didn't say anything about meeting up.
Okay. Bottom line, though, this is not the behavior you expect from a pastor, a married pastor, to be.
It's funny to me because it kind of feels like JP knows he sucks, it's not enough to just leave his number. He solely by himself is not prize enough. He's got to leave a ridiculously big tip to show off, to show this woman oh, I got money. If you get with JP, you're going to get big tips all the time. Oh my God. But you wouldn't get big tips all the time. Maybe money tips, but anyways. Additionally, Mica's younger sister, Anna, has made allegations that JP was seeing Susie along with other women while he was married to Mica.
And there's so much proof that they were getting separated. He was sending her nasty emails, and one of them's even online. He literally emailed Mica, "You disgust me," all kinds of stuff. He wanted nothing to do with her. He has another girlfriend. That's why it's getting so much attention, because he wanted nothing to do with her. Even though they weren't fully divorced, they were just separated. He was openly dating a girl named Susie, as well as Mica was getting messages from people seeing him out with different females every week. He was went with a different female somewhere out, and as well as constantly dating this one girl. So it's like he was still playing the field as well as preaching every single Sunday, and putting Mica through all this and our family. And so he's allowed to openly date people.
Now, let's talk a little bit about Mica's family and how they feel about all of this and what steps they're taking to make sure the person that they believe has some responsibility for Mica's death faces justice. On May 3rd, Mica's sister, Sierra Francis, filed an application with the court to be appointed the special administrator of her sister's estate. Basically, Sierra wanted to make sure that JP wasn't going to just start selling off marital assets, that even though Mica was gone, Sierra was going to pick up where she left off. And Sierra said that she and Mica spoke on the phone every few days and they texted daily. They would even create music playlists together. And once a month, they would drive together to Gaffney, South Carolina to visit family. Sierra said, quote, "I knew my sister to have expressed the abuse and violence against her by her husband to others, including family members and members of the church congregation. Mica told me that there were people following her, keeping track of where she went. She thought that Mr. Miller hired people to follow her. Mr. Miller later confirmed this during a sermon I watched. Mica confided in me that Mr. Miller was moving assets that were in his name, such as his vehicle, changing the deed to their house to the church, transferring interests in Crocodile Rocks to one of his sons. Mica talked about what she wanted her life to be like following her divorce from Mr. Miller. Having traveled for a church mission this past fall from October 15th through October 27th, 2023, Mica was intending to participate in additional missions, even to live part-time in Kenya. Mica recently shipped some of her personal items to Kenya in preparation for her stay there. My sister was hopeful for the future after filing for divorce from John Paul Miller. My sister also expressed to me that she was fearful that she would not make it to the divorce and that her life would be taken away from her. It is my belief, based on conversations with my sister, that she told multiple people, including other family members. Mica stated on many occasions, if I end up with a bullet in my head, it was not by me, it was JP. End quote. So basically, Sierra's just saying Mica told us all that she was being abused, that she was trying to get away. But also, the more important thing to realize is Mica was making future plans. She was planning to go on another mission. She was planning to move to Kenya for a little bit. She'd even sent some of her things there. Who would do that if they were planning to take their own life? Now, Mica's brother, Nathaniel, also filed an affidavit in probate court, stating that he saw Mica frequently since they both lived in Horry County, and he'd once been a member of Solid Rock Church. In fact, Mica's whole family, as we had talked about recently, had been members of Solid Rock Church. They didn't leave when everything went down with Mica. They left far before that. They didn't like JP. They didn't like the things he was saying on the stage. They didn't like his sermons. They didn't like his cocky attitude and behavior. I don't know. I'm just making that up, but that's what I wouldn't like about him. Like the self-satisfied smugness that just radiates out of him. It's just, it makes me sick. So Nathaniel said that Mica confided in him about JP moving her belongings to the home of another church member so he could keep an eye on her. And Nathaniel had seen an email where JP had told Mica that he didn't like it when she talked to her family about him or when she put her family before him. And he said it made him angry. Now, this email from JP to Mica said, quote, "When someone hurts me, I try to hurt them back rather than forgive. Instead of me forgiving you, I just attack and try to cause pain," end quote. And you might be like, oh, this is like self-awareness. This is really a good sign, you know, like, no, it's not self-awareness. It's a lack of self-awareness, actually. He's saying it because he doesn't think there's anything wrong with it. Like, he doesn't know how bad it sounds. He may think it's like, oh, yeah, this isn't, you know, the best thing, but it's like a human flaw. No, this is psychopathic. This is horrible. This is what people with zero emotional intelligence do. When someone hurts me, I try to get back at them. I try to hurt them back. And the funniest part is this is hypocritical on top of everything, because isn't he a pastor? Isn't what JP does every Sunday is get up on that stage and preach about forgiveness? You know, not lashing out, not hurting other people. Like, don't hurt people, forgive people. That's what God wants. And he's saying, instead of me forgiving you, I just try to attack you and cause pain. And he has no self-awareness of how terrible this sounds. But this is what narcissists do. Mica told her brother Nathaniel on more than one occasion that she was afraid of JP, that she wanted to get away from him. And she told Nathaniel that she'd had documents drawn up that would give her brother power of attorney to make decisions for her. However, These alleged documents were never located, and the only documents that were located show J.P. Miller as having power of attorney for his late wife. And that's why, obviously, Sierra's trying to get that away from him. Sierra's trying to, basically not let J.P. continue to control Mica even after her death. On May 5th, 2 memorial services were held to celebrate Mica's life. One was organized by her family. It was held on the beach. The other was done at Solid Rock Church and was presided over by none other than J.P. Miller, who, if I said he acted bizarre, it would be the understatement of the year. There are no words for the way J.P. behaved as he stood in front of his congregation and remembered his wife. Now listen to this, and I'm going to cut in every now and then with some commentary.
I've been speaking for many years, and for the first time, I don't really know exactly, how to open or how to close or any of that. I'm just, everyone knew how beautiful she was on the outside, but only I think a spouse knows how beautiful that person is on the inside. It really hadn't hit me. I've gotten to spend, as Christians, of course, we know she's not here and in heaven, and she's, worshiping and enjoying, and I hadn't even had time to look down here yet. But I got to lay next to her body and spend time with her body about 4 times this week, and each time it still didn't hit me. I thought she was going to wake up. I even tried to raise her from the dead one time this week, and
Yeah, you did hear correctly. JP said that after Mica died, he was able to spend time with her body 4 times, and he tried to raise her from the dead. So there's that. But he's not done making it about himself or making it weird.
And that morning, actually, I went to the mall later. She had bought me this dog tag, and the chain broke, so I went to the mall to get it fixed. And I saw a female about 20, 30 feet in front of me, and she was wearing one of Mica's dresses, and she had the same tattoo Mica has on her arm and the exact same hair. And out of just instinct, I screamed, "Mica!" And the girl turned around, and it was one of her sisters. And I thought I raised her from the dead. She's alive, But I can't wait to see her again one day.
I'm very sure, JP, that she can wait to see you. In fact, if there's a heaven and a hell, when JP dies, Mica is going to put in a request with whoever it is, the HR, customer service, whatever. She's going to put in a request to be transferred to the bowels of hell, to the fire, rather than have to see that clown ever again. Now, pay attention to the emotion JP is exhibiting when he's talking about Mica. And let me know what you see, because for the life of me, I can't figure out if he's laughing or crying. Can't figure it out. Let me know.
I'm good. So I have pictures, and I want to just tell you some stuff about her. So any picture you see, it was her idea to take the picture. I'm not a picture guy, and she, if I'm in the picture, she would tell me how to stand, how to smile. If it wasn't good, she'd delete it and say, "We're redoing it." She'd get tourists to take our picture, and I say, "Okay, thank you." She said, "Oh no, this isn't good. Give it back to them," and they do it again, But she told me that she was so creative. Everything she did was so creative. What's the next picture? What's the next picture? She'd stop. We'd be on the way to like a show or something. She'd say, "Stop, I gotta get a picture." I said, "We're gonna be late." She said, "I don't care." What's the next picture? Next picture? Okay, next one's a Spider Girl picture. She did that. And I'll show that. Okay, keep going. Wonder Woman, that was her favorite. Everybody knew her as Wonder Woman. Oh my goodness. Okay, what's after that? In Bermuda, she loved Bermuda. That was a picture of that. Next. Here she is, how excited she is. I'm about to jump out of a plane. I'm drinking a coffee. And that was pretty much her life story right there. She was so excited, man. She jumped out of a plane many times. What's the next picture we got? Oh, there. The boys are so funny on our vacations. What's the next one? She was all big into tattoos, and I cannot stand tattoos because they hurt, and I don't like pain. And the first time we went, she had gotten the 2 crosses, and she begged and begged and begged for me to get the matching tattoo. So we went to the tattoo guy, and I said, "Listen, I don't like pain." I said, "Can we start with the smaller one? That way, if it hurts too bad, we can just stop there." And I discovered that while I was doing this and not looking, she was telling the guy, "Start with the big one." And so we started with the big one. I was like, oh my goodness. And then after that, I discovered this numbing cream you can buy online where you can put on you and you don't feel the tattoo. So after that, I said, okay, I'll do whatever you want. And so I'm so sorry that I'm nervous. I'm so sorry. It hasn't really still hit me yet. She would write poetry. And I thought, what kind of woman, writes poetry? And she'd just write poetry. Imagine being married to that. It was like that in our house all the time. Y'all stand to your feet, and Pastor Randall's going to close in prayer.
Now, of course, as they do, the body language experts got a hold of this footage and they gave their opinions. And I don't know how much you personally buy into the art or the science of body language, but there's probably some truth to it. There's probably some fact to it. And I just thought I would play it for you anyways, because it does add context. And I tend to agree with the body language experts' summary and conclusion.
We're not seeing any grief here. We're not seeing what are called adapters, the things that we use to comfort ourselves, to self-soothe ourselves, like wringing of the hands, those kind of things. He's got what's supposed to be tears happening. That's not happening. He has no tissues there with him. His nose isn't running. He's trying to pretend it is, but it isn't. These are all the classic cues of someone who is faking an emotion. And if you'll notice, if someone's really feeling an emotion, that's what the emotions fire those expressions onto your face, in other words, from your brain, from your limbic system. And those don't last on him. We don't see grief. And the little bit of grief there's a semi-sadness that we see in there is taken away by a smile. And the smile is more prevalent than his grief is, or than his sadness is. This is one of those things that shows so many things that are wrong with it. I'm actually going to use this in training because these are all the classics right here, all of them.
Wow. You're going to use this in training. Holy Dinah.
Yeah.
There's something I read that you had mentioned about a forehead, like tells in the forehead. What's that about here in this video?
Well, quite often we get what is referred to as the grief muscle. It's sort of like an upside down horseshoe that happens right here in the glabella area of the forehead. And when you see that, I can't do it. You may be able to, I don't know. It only shows up when someone is actually feeling grief. They're remembering something very sad. They've just lost someone in their family, maybe a pet, and you'll see, or if they're in great pain, then you'll see the grief muscle show up. It shows up right there. We're seeing, and you could say, oh, this is Botox in his forehead and all that. He may have a little bit in there, but you would still see some movement up in here if he did that. I don't think he's feeling any grief here. We're not hearing it in his voice. His voice, he's under the impression when you're sad that your voice goes way high. Quite often it drops low and you can't speak. And when it's that high, it breaks too much. His voice is way too clean for this, way too clean for him to be as sad as he's saying that he is. Also, his arms are too far away from his torso. The one hand he's gesturing with, he's got one in his pocket, but notice you can see space in there. When we're sad, when we're trying to comfort ourselves, or someone is grieving like he's supposed to be, then you'll see the arms come close to the body. We're not seeing that at all. Not at all. Just his hand in his pocket, and he is swaying back and forth some because he thinks that's what he's supposed to do, but he's not doing it right. He's not doing the correct things he should be doing. That is an adapter, but he's not using his hands or his shoulders. His shoulders are too high. He's not bent over. So many things in this. I could go on for 30 minutes. I'll watch.
I got a spidey sense about it, but you've just put so much of it into actual language that makes sense. I want you to watch the other thing that we collected for you. Okay. It's John Paul announcing to his congregation the death of his wife the day after it happened, but he does it at the very end of his sermon. So take a look at that, and then I want to get your thoughts on it after. Take a look.
All right.
I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina. And we're going to have a funeral for her next Sunday here at 3 p.m. And so it's all I can, I'm just kind of going on adrenaline right now. So y'all pray for me and my kids and everybody. And y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally, and that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her. And so I'm sure there'll be more details to come.
Okay, what do you make of that?
Again, we're not seeing things we should be seeing. No grief in the forehead, no grief in the face. His expression is blank. It's not sad. We're not hearing the low tone that we should be hearing. Before, we heard the thing where he's at the funeral all whiny and stuff, and his voice is really high. This is where he's trying to show emotion, and he's not really showing any emotion. Again, his arms are far away from his body. Why bring up his wife's medical, or not being able to get medicine during this? That's called a qualifier. He's qualifying what's happened to her. These are all this is so, it's horrible, but it's really good when you want to show someone the body language of what shouldn't be happening when someone's grieving.
JP also helpfully wrote Mica's obituary. And he wrote, quote, Mica was energetic, affirming, adventurous, faithful, loving, giving, forgiving, talented, joyous, creative, assertive, bold, determined, authoritative, passionate, hardworking, a risk taker, and so much more. She and JP have been friends since 2009, married in 2017, and spent almost every single day and night together. Mica loved her little dog, Loki. She loved doing outdoor activities like waterfall rappelling, hiking, skydiving, running, and going to the beach. Mica would take on any challenge, even if it was being vegan for an entire year. Mica was a great stepmother and an amazing wife and helpmate. She helped Pastor JP with the church in every way. Mica was the worship leader, women's ministry leader, and pastor's assistant. And she did all of this with the utmost integrity and faithfulness. Mica made the greatest efforts to always be the best wife she could be. She truly served Jesus and her husband with all of her heart. She would praise her husband after each church service, telling him he was the best preacher in the world, even if it wasn't true. She also told him he was the funniest preacher in the world, even though it wasn't true either. Mica loved her family so much. She looked forward to every text from her father or brother. She sought every opportunity to pour into her sisters. There were thousands of nights she would pray out loud for God to always bless and take care of her family. They were constantly on her mind. Mica wanted more than anything for each member of her family to serve Jesus continually. Mica loved her ice bath, nice car, sauna, house, etc., but more than anything on earth was her desire to see people come to Jesus. End quote. Ugh, he's the funniest and best pastor ever. If she told you that, JP, it's because she felt she had to, or you'd throw a little baby bitch boy fit and then make her day difficult. So she told you whatever she felt you needed to hear so that she could continue on with her life in peace and not have a petulant child pulling at her skirts. Now, recently, and this is why I'm so glad I waited to make these videos, because literally 4 days after I recorded the last video, this came out. This stuff came out. This new information from JP's ex-wife, Allison. Every day new information comes out. That's why it's taking me so long to put these videos together. But this stuff was good, and I'm glad I waited, because it wasn't one of those things where it was like, oh, new information, but it's not like earth-shaking. I feel like this is earth-shaking. So this past week, emergency custody documents emerged, which included multiple allegations from Allison towards JP. Citing exigent circumstances and the possibility of imminent danger and harm, Allison asked a family court judge this week to grant her permanent sole custody of the 2 minor children that she and JP share. She also asked that JP and his father, who we're going to talk about later in this video, that they have no contact with herself or her children. Quote, John Paul has exhibited increasingly unstable behaviors. His mental health has increasingly deteriorated, and he's demonstrated behavior patterns that are erratic and irrational. At times, he has foregone his designated periods of visitation based upon his own assertions of not being mentally well enough for his children to be in his care. End quote. The affidavit goes on saying that JP failed to provide a safe and stable environment for his minor children during his periods of visitation, and he has exposed the minor children to incidents of domestic dispute and discord, which they were traumatized by. The affidavit continues, quote, based upon information and belief, defendant has continued to engage in deviant sexual behaviors and has exposed the parties' minor children to an immoral and unsafe environment. Defendant has exposed his minor children to his adulterous misconduct with his paramour and repeatedly involved both the plaintiff and minor children in his marital difficulties. End quote. Allison asserts that she asked JP to not talk about Mica's death with his kids, but he ignored her request and he did so anyways. And before Mica's death, it has now come out that Mica confided in Allison, sharing intimate details regarding JP's behavior. Allison said that Mica had provided a safety net for the children when she was alive, but now that she's no longer alive, that's no longer possible. That safety net's no longer there. So it says a lot that this woman feels more comfortable with her kids being with her ex-husband when her ex-husband's new wife was there than she does with her kids being with her ex-husband just alone. Allison described Sunday sermons given by JP with his children present, during which he disparaged Mica, telling his congregation about her battles with mental health issues before he finally had her committed. When Mica returned from the facility, Allison described an incredibly unpredictable environment where JP would call Mica crazy one day and then tell his children she was fine the next. I call that Jekyll and Hyde syndrome. One day you're Dr. Jekyll, one day you're Mr. Hyde. Some days you're Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde every other 10 minutes. That's what narcissists do. They try one tactic on you, being nice, and when that doesn't get them what they want, they switch up, then they're mean, and then when that doesn't get them what they want, they switch up, then they're nice again. They go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, trying to figure out which side of them you're going to respond to better, which side is going to scare you more, intimidate you more, or trick you and manipulate you more. The affidavit goes on to say, quote, they never knew what to expect, and the intense unpredictability and marital discord between JP and Mica affected them all. On one occasion, while picking up our daughter, I observed holes in the walls, hinges off the door, and pieces of paper taped to the wall with negative affirmations about Mica. JP told me and our children that Mica was delusional and speaking in different languages and seeing things that were not there, end quote. Dude, so clearly JP has a temper, right? Holes in the walls, doors off hinges. He's got a temper. I'm not surprised. Allegedly. Just my opinion. Don't come for me. But she's speaking in different languages and she's delusional. Dude, you were the one who got up on stage in front of a bunch of people and said you tried to raise your dead wife from the dead. Who's delusional? Okay? Who's delusional? Allison said that one night she received a call from JP and he told her that Mica was having a mental breakdown and that Mica was on her way to see Allison. And JP asked his ex-wife to hold Mica there when she arrived, and Allison believed he was trying to have Mica committed again. Allison also says that when Mica finally left JP, she went to Allison for advice. They prayed together, and Mica told Allison that she and the children were in danger with JP. Along with that affidavit, Allison submitted exhibits. And one of those exhibits was a text message from Mica's mother begging Allison to call her because she was concerned for the safety of her daughter. The text said, quote, I am begging you to not let JP know I've reached out to you. He will just further isolate Mica from us, end quote. Now, there was also a group text message thread between JP, Allison, and Mica where they were discussing custody arrangements after one daughter turned 13. And in this thread, Allison says, the custody arrangement will not be changing because JP, quote, committed terrible crimes of sexually molesting underage children, end quote. There were also text messages from JP's daughter's phone sent to Mica asking her to come home during a time that Mica had left the home. And this is JP using his daughter and using Mica's love for his daughter to try to convince Mica to come back, to go back into the rat's nest. And on March 11th, 2024, just a month before her death, Mica sent a text to Allison that said, quote, I need to talk to you ASAP for the safety of your kids. Please call me, end quote. Here is Mica's father, Michael Francis, discussing the claims of Allison and the relationship between Mica and Allison as they bonded over their shared trauma of being married to JP Miller. Also, he mentioned something about the allegations of JP being a regular customer of sex workers.
All right, let's fill our audience in. Allison is John Paul's first wife, and that's Allison correct. Was a supporter of Mica. The two of them actually bonded because Mica reached out to Allison for help when she felt she was being abused by John Paul.
Yes, Allison told her, get out, he won't stop. Get out, go away, he will not stop. And here we are.
Allison says that when she went to police to allege that John Paul was abusing women, that she was told by the police, nobody will believe you. John Paul is a prominent pastor in town. Nobody will believe you.
That's correct. She was trying to help out other victims who wanted to remain anonymous, and she went and was going to tell their story, and the officer told her, no one's going to believe you. You might as well not do it. I don't get it. I just don't get it. People are hurting and the cops are doing nothing. But yes, it was terrible. There was Mica, talked many times of being very confused. Who do I stay with? Dad, help me out here. And she came and stayed with me some in Virginia. And then it just went downhill once they got married.
I got to ask you, you're a father. Dads have gut feelings, have instincts. They're protective of their daughters. What did you think of John Paul when you met him?
I didn't want her to marry him, but they had already done a secret wedding in the first place. And the one that we did all in public was just for show. And I totally opposed it. There was things that were going on that were just baffling me. That him having matching tattoos to her, and then he even had her. This is he had a tattoo put on her of his signature. He owned her. That's what he felt like.
He had his own signature tattooed on her.
Yeah, and once we had her out for a while, and she was staying with me, she got a tattoo to cover it, and then she went back, and guess what? After a couple of years, back on.
I'd like you to weigh in on the allegations that Allison makes. I mean, these are big. Repeatedly unfaithful, okay, I have heard that before, but regularly hiring prostitutes, and then this bombshell, quote, sexually inappropriate with several underage female members, end quote, of Solid Rock Church. She says that these female members spoke to her and tried to get justice, but were told by police, he's a pastor, it's not going to happen. And the fact that Allison tried to speak to the police, but Michael, I've got to ask you, did Mica ever let on that any of these same behaviors that Allie is alleging happened during her marriage to JP?
Yes, bingo. That's the thing I'm talking about. As far as she's truthful, Mike's truthful. The court's already shown that they are truthful people, so we need to listen to them. Same things occurred during Allie's marriage that occurred during Micah's marriage to this man. And like I said, I was there for some of the texts. I was there for some of it. And that's one reason why I brought up the prostitution portion for Mica herself, because people were, he was trying to convince people that she's crazy. She's just, just coming up with stuff off the top of her head. No, Allison experienced the same things. So, yes, very
Can
important.
you be specific at all, Michael, about what incidents Mica had told you, the family members, that she dealt with during her marriage to JP that mirrored what Allie's saying?
Well, let's see. Well, just the fact that it just seemed to be like no big deal for John Paul to suddenly just say, let's go grab a prostitute after dinner or whatever, just nonchalant, and then basically just force Allison or Mica to be, in at least the view of this, and at least the exposure to it. Even just the process of looking for somebody to do that is just so baffling to me that he just does this. And it'd be great if some more people came forward about this, that would that have more details. Because I don't have details. I just know that it occurred.
After Mica died, the attention and the heat of the public started to focus on JP Miller, and then the smear campaign from his flying monkeys began. First, we have Russell Long, JP's lawyer, who released a statement on May 9th which said, quote, "Following the untimely death of Mica Miller, unfounded rumors and false accusations began circulating on social media and in various outlets suggesting Pastor Miller's involvement in her demise. This created a buzz, causing local and national media outlets to begin proliferating these falsehoods on a mammoth proportion. Our client refutes any report that suggests he ever abused his wife. It has come to light that Mica Miller struggled with mental illness, specifically bipolar disorder, which, when not properly managed, led to paranoid episodes and self-destructive behavior. Again, Mica suffered from mental illness, and some reports made by her in the past are nonsensical," end quote. Now, it appears that JP and his lawyer are sending a bunch of content creators cease and desist notice, like threatening to sue them, things like that. And it's so funny because that is the exact tactic that narcissists use. Now, I'm not saying that JP Miller's a narcissist. I'm not qualified to diagnose him. I haven't given him a medical examination or a psychological examination. But in my opinion, he is. Mica's family also believes that he is. So this is what narcissists will do because they don't want their true face to show. They wear a mask and they don't want their true face to show to the world. And so they get very mad when people start talking about them, when people start telling the truth, or even making any allegations at all. And all they have is to threaten and intimidate to make it stop. So they can send me a cease and desist letter. You guys should email me. I'll give you my address so you know where to send it. But the fact of the matter is we live in a country where we're allowed to speak. We're allowed to talk about what's being printed in the newspapers. I'm not coming up with this off the top of my head. I'm not making this up. I'm not, making any allegations. I'm just talking about what other people have said, what's been printed in the paper, what's been talked about on the news. So send me a cease and desist letter and threaten to sue me, but it won't stop people from talking about who you are and what you did. And then we have JP's father, Reginald Miller. And this guy's a character all on his own, even without the context of the very muddied waters of Mica's case. Reginald released a lengthy and poorly written statement to the Daily Mail claiming that Mica was a very sick young woman. Quote, her family refused to believe how sick she was. Did you see the smile on her face buying the gun? Is that a distraught woman? Did you ever see any crying or upset in her voice in her 911 call? No, because she was in one of her psychotic states, end quote. Oh, yeah, the psychotic states she gets into around Christmas where she might sell her car so that she can go on a shopping spree. Sell a car, buy a few pairs of Lululemon leggings, the psychotic. Now, according to good old Reggie Miller, 2 weeks after she married JP, Mica shot up the neighborhood and then tried to take her own life. He went on to say, quote, I have a video of Mica on a mission where she tells last year how she took a gun to kill herself and pulled the trigger and the bullet locked in the gun. When all of this is over and they see in the second weeks of marriage, she went out and got a gun and was outside shooting up the neighborhood when my son ran out to stop her. She spent the first 3 weeks in a mental facility and all the times since then, end quote. Now, it is true there's a video of Mica talking to a crowd and explaining how, at one time she, considered taking her own life. That is true. And I'm not even saying that Mica didn't take her own life at this point. I'm saying that there's reasons people feel like they no longer want to be alive. And mental, emotional, physical, psychological torture over an extended period of time, that'll do it. That'll do it. Reggie defended his son JP, saying that JP had loved Mica very much and he had done all he could to keep her on her meds and help her through her psychotic states. At one point, JP had called the police because Mica gave him a bloody nose, but he refused to press charges. That's because it didn't actually happen. She didn't actually do that. My opinion, allegedly, don't come for me. Reggie said, quote, she told me just a couple of months ago that her family were mad because she was with JP because she had told them things that weren't true. When they realized they weren't true, they were all mad with her, end quote. But that's convenient for you to say because, no one else was around for that conversation. Mica told you that, right? Mica told you that. She didn't tell him that, in my opinion, allegedly. But Reginald Miller may not be the most trusted source to get accurate information from. And he has a very checkered past. 75-year-old Reverend Reginald Miller began his ministry in Pamplico, South Carolina 50 years ago. And before JP was even a twinkle in his father's eye, Reggie had already founded a Bible college, the Gloryland Bible College in Florence. And he was pastor of one of the largest charismatic churches in South Carolina, along with being a popular televangelist. When JP was born, his father was 30 and had already built a reputation for being a leading figure in the charismatic movement. But then, as they do, ensuing scandals cast a shadow over his sterling name. In the late 80s, Miller was going through a divorce and was the subject of a 5-part investigation spearheaded by a local television station. His wife, Susan Miller, accused him of making sexual advances toward students of the Bible College. And according to Fitz News, the identity of the women making the allegations were hidden, but Reggie's reputation suffered. In the divorce proceedings, Susan Miller said that her world began to crumble when she learned that her husband had not only been inappropriate with female students, but the male ones as well. In 1993, Reginald Miller packed his family up and left Florence, settling in Myrtle Beach, basically trying to outrun the bad press. Reggie had plans to take over a portion of the closed Myrtle Beach Air Force Base and turn it into a seminary campus for international students. He also opened Cathedral Baptist Church on the same property, a 2.18-acre parcel he purchased on the Air Force Base for $280,000 in 1995. Back in the game, Reginald Miller began to think big again, itching to get another 10 to 15 acres to expand his seminary school and church. The school was approved for a student visa program, but it was not accredited through the U.S. Department of Education, and that means that whatever credits students earned while at the school would not transfer to any other educational institution. Basically, they were useless. Now, 2006 was a big year for the Millers. Reggie married his second wife, and JP founded Solid Rock Ministries. But then in September of that year, the elder Miller was arrested in a Myrtle Beach State Park bathhouse and charged with lewdness and prostitution after he exposed himself to an undercover male police officer. Once again, instead of facing and cleaning up the mess he had made, Reggie ran, this time to Marion, South Carolina, where he restarted the Cathedral Bible College, and he sold the Myrtle Beach land that he had previously used for that college and for the seminary school to Solid Rock Church for $300,000. Man, didn't even give your kid a deal. Unsurprisingly, Reggie's troubles were not over because in 2014, 8 international students accused Reginald Miller of forcing them to work long hours with very little pay. And they said if they pushed back, Reggie would threaten to have their visas taken away. According to Fitz News, the students described a pervasive climate of fear and poor living conditions, as well as extended periods of time without heat, AC, or hot water. But that wasn't all. The food they were given was often expired, and their classes were a sham, designed to exploit them for their labor. The students reported working between 30 and 56 hours a week, both at the college and at Miller's personal residence, but they were only being paid $50 a week. Now, Reginald Miller was arrested for this on May 14th. He pleaded not guilty. His bond was set at $250,000. He later changed his plea to guilty and made a deal with the federal prosecutors to plead guilty to fraud in foreign labor contracting, visa fraud, and failure to pay minimum wage. While he was waiting to hear what his sentence would be, Reggie's second wife filed for divorce on August 14th, 2015. And in October of that year, Miller was ordered to pay $75,000 in restitution, and he was sentenced to 3 years of parole, during which he had to forfeit his passport. Now, he'd served 2 years of his supervision before Reggie was writing to the judge asking if he could have his passport back so he could travel the world and do mission work and establish colleges and churches in different countries. From the year 2000 to the year 2015, Cathedral Baptist Church racked up thousands of dollars in state and federal liens. But it didn't stop there because Reggie continued running his Bible college and took many trips overseas, including one to Pakistan 8 months before Mica Miller died. And while he was there in Pakistan, allegations were once again swirling around, directed his way from multiple men who basically asked Miller in a YouTube video not to ever return to their country of Pakistan.
Hello, Brother Jerry. We hope you are doing well. We just want to inform you that we don't want to work with Dr. Miller, and we don't want Dr. Miller in Pakistan.
Also, I want to tell you, our church families and school students are not satisfied with them. Also, our team don't feel safe to work with them.
We don't want to work with Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller started a ministry with us, and after 8 or 9 months, he focusing on only one family, and is not paying attention to the church, school, and also Bible college. So that's why we don't want to work with him. We want to do the work of God. So if you wanna work with us, you can. Please, Dr. Miller, stay in USA and don't come to Pakistan.
Now, according to Reggie Miller, the whole international student fiasco thing was an honest mistake. And he said, quote, "In 2014, I had signed 2 student visas that they knew English because I had been led to believe that they did. When they got here, they did not know English. I was supposed to have reported them, but I did not, giving them English lessons instead. I therefore committed visa fraud by not reporting them and pled guilty to that. The only reason I was in prison leading up to the pleading is that I had no money for bail because I had never maintained a balance greater than a couple $1,000s since all my life had been given to helping others." The other 2 charges were 2 students who had worked over the 20-hour requirement of how much they could work. I had considered some of those hours training, end quote. You love how people like this can't just take accountability. They can't just be like, yeah, that was messed up, man. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I've learned my lesson. It's like, I'm just a good person, and I'm so good that I just didn't see all the other nefarious people, pretending they spoke English and then showing up. And I taught them English. They lied to me about speaking English, and I still had the generosity inside of me to teach them English. And yeah, a couple of them worked over the 20-hour requirement, but I considered some of those hours training, because I'm helping them, giving them life skills and teaching them about the Lord and about English. Dude, did you tell them you considered it training, or did you just keep them working 50 hours at your house and paying them $50 a week? It's disgusting. Disgusting. In his statement to the Daily Mail, Reggie vehemently asserted that JP had nothing to do with Mica's death, that he was not seeing another woman, and he had not been with another woman on the day of Mica's death. Why is this important? Well, because a statement released by the police when they determined Mica had died by her own hand said, quote, investigators learned through interviews that John Paul Miller was at an athletic event in Charleston on the day of Mica Miller's death. John Miller's vehicle was observed traveling Highway 17 bypass in Horry County at 2:22 p.m. on April 27, 2024. The investigators confirmed that John Miller was accompanied while traveling to and from the event in Charleston. End quote. It was also said that the authorities were looking into the whereabouts of a woman that JP was romantically involved with, and they discovered that this woman was also not in North Carolina the night before or the day of Mica's death. So why is that important? Because it kind of made it seem like the police said, hey, we know JP wasn't in town. He was in Charleston. Not only that, but he was with somebody who can account for his whereabouts the whole time. And then they go into talking about a woman that JP's seeing who also wasn't in the area of Orem on the day of Mica's death or the day after. And we have Reginald Miller coming out and being like, this is just a lie that JP was seeing anybody else. He does not have another girlfriend. He was not with another woman on the day of Mica's death. And it's like, dude, did you just destroy his alibi? Because that was his alibi. Now, do the police have more than just seeing JP's car traveling on the highway? Because anybody could have been in it. Do they have more than that? Do they have more than the word of whoever was with JP this entire time? I hope so. I would assume so, right? I'd assume they'd have some surveillance from this sporting event in Charleston, or they'd have to, show that a ticket was purchased, or they'd ask other people who were at this sporting event whether or not JP was there. I hope that they have done that. But I want to talk about JP in his youth and the things he did when he was just a young lad tooling around South Carolina before following in his father's footsteps and bringing the word of God to the people. And then we'll talk about how he clearly didn't learn the lessons of his youth and how he continued his bad behavior into adulthood. In 1998, when JP was 19 years old, he was indicted on charges of assault and battery of a high and aggravated nature. And when you hear why he was charged with these things, you will feel the absolute unhingedness of a person who would be capable of doing what he did. And not only that, thinking that he was not going to get caught, that he wasn't going to face any repercussions for it. So according to the Myrtle Beach Sun News, the indictment charged Miller with hitting a woman twice with his vehicle at a high rate of speed on February 8, 1998. The victim, 19-year-old Jennifer Garland, filed a personal injury lawsuit against JP on October 2, 1998, and according to Jennifer, she was assisting her family as they were sandbagging homes in the Bride Creek subdivision of Myrtle Beach in response to extreme flooding in that area. So they lived in that neighborhood. They were just helping their neighbors, save their homes from being flooded. And at the time of the incident, the roadway had been closed by Horry County authorities. But we all know the rules don't apply to people like J.P. Miller. And so he entered the area in a silver S10 pickup truck with a piece of black tape over his license plate, ignoring the closed road sign. Now, documents state that JP had been in the area earlier in a different truck, and he'd been speeding down the closed roadway, causing Jennifer and her family to ask him to stop, to ask him to leave. So he comes back in a different vehicle with tape over the license plate, hoping that they don't realize he's the same person. And when he returned in that black truck, he began speeding around, harassing the people who were helping their neighbors. And at the same time, Jennifer Garland was walking down the road yelling at JP to slow down. But instead of slowing down, JP accelerated and ran into Jennifer, forcing her onto the hood of his vehicle, and he drove off with her on the hood for a good 100 yards before someone stepped in and stopped him, allowing Jennifer to roll off the vehicle. Reportedly, JP then fled the scene. Now, as a result of this incident, Jennifer Garland suffered severe, painful, and permanent injuries, and JP was arrested on February 11th, and his bail was set at $5,000. It's kind of crazy that you can hit a woman with a car and your bail set at $5,000, but if you commit labor fraud, your bail set at $250,000. Shouldn't they be the same? Shouldn't it, if you're a violent person who hurts people, shouldn't it be the same as if you're an asshole who uses and manipulates people? Come on. So JP was back out on the streets that same day, and when the case went before a judge, JP did not contest the charges, and he received a suspended sentence of 4 years with 3 years of probation and an order to perform 500 hours of community service. Now, on May 31st, 2022, J.P. Miller received a pardon for this conviction. Why? I don't know. You tell me. Now, Solid Rock Church, JP's church, has recently announced plans to expand their portfolio by building a 7-figure school for grades 1 through 9 off of Highway 17 bypass. It's a costly project, but according to JP Miller himself, money is the most fascinating subject to him in the Bible. In a 2021 sermon, JP said, quote, "All growing up, I saw Christians manipulate each other financially. I've seen spouses break up and have horrible marriages because they fight about money. I've seen friendships that were supposed to last forever disintegrate because of money," end quote. Now, Solid Rock takes part in something called tithing, and the church believes that tithing is a commandment of God. The context is that since ancient times, God has commanded his people to give 1/10 of their earnings to him, and he promises great blessings to those who choose to pay tithing because it demonstrates obedience and love and helps strengthen faith in God.
That's the point of our core values, is to make sure we are growing as disciples, not just Christians. And so today I want to talk to you about our core value, we give. We give. And I'll be honest with you, money is the most fascinating subject to me in the Bible. So when I finally gave my heart to Jesus, and then a few years after that I started pastoring, I immediately studied every single scripture in the Bible about money, and it is the most amazing subject. I mean, when you really dive in to what God says, how we should handle money and what the purpose of money is, it will amaze you and shock you. So let me give you a few facts before we get into our message today. And the first one is this: the Bible has 400 verses on faith, 500 on prayer, and 2,000 are about money. Of the 2,000, 1,971 of them are about how money is the greatest contestant for our heart. Above any addiction, above any type of immorality, above anything we could ever battle in life, 1,971 verses in the Bible say that money has the potential to steal your heart away from Jesus above everything else. Jesus preached about money more than any other subject. Hell was number 2. Money says, "I'm the answer to your problems." How many of you, don't raise your hand, but how many of you in life, you thought, if I just had more money, I'd have less problems? Now, biblically, the Bible actually says the more money you have, the more battles you have. Biblically, okay? But again, money says, "I'm the answer to your problems." But God says, wait a minute. I'm the answer to your problems. It's harder for people to get to heaven who have more money, because that's just more of a battle for them to be pulled away from God. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, I'm not rich. I don't fall in that category. Listen, if you make more than $4,760 a year, which is, in other words, if you make more than $100 a week, then you're in the top 24% of the world's wealthiest and richest people. So all of you are rich. Don't leave here thinking you're not rich. You're rich. So what does God's word say about money? How can we get under the blessing? How can we get to a place in life where the greatest battle in human history, the greatest reason for stress, the greatest reason for divorce, the greatest reason for war, how can we win this battle? How can this be something we don't have to really worry about in life? I'm going to show you. Point number 1 is this. Ready? Say, oh yeah. Okay, point number 1 is it's God's tithe. It's God's tithe. Now, the word tithe comes from the Hebrew word tenth, meaning the first tenth of your income. And Malachi 3 says, "Will a man rob God, yet you rob me?" In other words, you're a thief. How? You've withheld tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me. Now, I just want you to understand, I wish I could communicate how possessive the tithe is to God. All through the Hebrew, anytime you see the word tithe, it is incredibly, you'll see this today, incredibly possessive. He says, it's mine. It's not yours. It belongs to me. It is for my purpose. It's like the last Krispy Kreme donut. Don't touch it. Don't smell it. Don't lick it. Don't put your finger on it. It's mine.
You'd think someone begging for money so hard that he devotes an entire sermon to it, he'd be lacking money. But it doesn't seem that Solid Rock was lacking in the finance department at all. The church boasts a multi-million-dollar portfolio and owns 4 properties with a total taxable value of $5.59 million. The church even has its own plane, a $430,000 4-seater, which is supposedly used for ministry work. But flight records show it's only made 2 trips all year. 1 trip from Barrow County, Georgia to Knoxville in February, and then from Knoxville, which is in Tennessee, to Rocky Mountain, North Carolina in April. The church also owns JP's house, which we're going to talk about in a second. And records show that Solid Rock Church is worth $1.93 million. They also own 28.2 acres of land totaling $3.42 million. Land records show that JP's home in Horry County was sold to the church in December of 2023. Why is that timing odd? Because it's 2 months after Mica filed for divorce for the first time and requested that the value of the marital home be split equally between herself and JP. So he just sells it to the church so that he doesn't own it anymore, even though he owns the church, so he sold it to himself. Additionally, JP sold the house to Solid Rock for $169,000, but records show the value of the property is actually around $240,000. There have also been rumors that the church had its members add them to their life insurance policies. Now, right at this moment, there's nothing substantial to prove or disprove that. It's just people who were at the church said that the church made them add Solid Rock to their life insurance policies, which sounds kind of culty, okay? I believe it was Jim Jones. Yeah, Jim Jones. Jonestown. You know, everybody drinking the Flavor Aid and all that. He did the same thing. It's very culty. So I don't really know if it's true or not true. It's just people have claimed that. However, I think it's safe to say that if an investigation went into the funds of Solid Rock and how they were gathered and how they were spent, some interesting things might be uncovered. Now, family members say that Mica had been collecting evidence against JP for months, remember? And when that stuff went missing after her admittance to the mental health facility, she started all over again, even reporting JP and the church to the IRS. And that report was made the same week she died. So we've got some motives here. Let's say JP was involved somehow with Mica's death. We have motives here. We have motives of JP not wanting Mica to divorce him, JP not wanting to give Mica his money, and Mica reporting his church to the IRS. And also Mica telling people things about him that he didn't want her to be telling them. As of now, Mica Miller's family does not believe the official statement of what happened to her. They point to JP's behavior before Mica's death. They point to Mica's own behavior and words before her death. And they've highlighted details from the day of her death and the state of the crime scene that they don't believe align with a suicide.
She was smiling when she got the gun because she was happy to get protection for herself. She told me right before that she was going to be able to go do that. So we expected that, things were going to be better, and she got a job. She was doing fine, and she had plans. She had hair appointments, nail salon. She had bills she was, worried to get paid because she had items that were at his house that he wouldn't give her, that she was still paying for, and then try to sell them online. Well, who does that?
You obviously don't believe that she killed herself.
I don't. There's no way she would have done it. The way that whole scenario occurred, she got dressed for work and then was either coaxed or tricked or something out there to a place no one has gone to before in our family, a place no one knows about except, I don't know, who does. We know some people already know about it that live in the area. And it is not something that she would just, go do out of nowhere. She would not have left her shift unattended. She's that much of a caring person. She would have covered her bases. She would have left money with people to do things. She would have not left her godmother with a car payment. This is not what Mike was like. She was a caring person who wanted to make sure people were taken care of.
This is video her family filmed when they visited.
The theory of suicide does not add up to me because you're telling me her body floated all the way down this stagnant water and her belongings were all the way up here. We had to walk down a trail, a separate trail, climb through all this mud and trees and fallen debris to even get to where her body was, down the water. It's not like she could have, left her belongings and walked down the water and then committed suicide down here, and then somehow the bullets and everything stayed over there.
So the bank where the bird boxes and stuff are is where the shell casings and such were found, and the gun was found forward of that, right in the water. And then her body was about 40 meters away, and the water doesn't flow at all. There's no way she would have floated 40 meters away from the edge. It is as if she was placed there.
Texted me again at 3:47 and said, "Are you singing this Sunday? I'll be at second service." And I said, "Yes."
Micah's friend Angela Clark was among the last to speak with her the night before she died, making plans for Sunday, offering to help with car payments.
She said, "Okay, I'm excited to see you up there."
Despite all the surveillance, she is not buying the official ruling.
This is not somebody that's ready to end their life. This is somebody that's making plans for the weekend, and getting her car payment made. Why do you worry about getting your car payment made? For that matter, why do you pay a lawyer $5,000 and file for divorce and have someone served? There's so many unanswered questions. Like I said, I can't wrap my brain around it. None of it there's so much that just doesn't make sense.
Her family agrees. It does not add up.
So you do not believe she took her own life?
I do not. I believe that it was all staged. I believe that the whole thing was premeditated.
It's all part of why the family hopes that the FBI is taking a deep look into this case. Well, this is video that was provided by her family to us, and it basically shows, if you're looking at the video, on screen left at the very top of the video, this is where authorities say were the shell casings, multiple shell casings, and a live round, and where she ultimately took her life. Where the flowers are downstream, this is not even a stream, this is stagnant water. That is where her body was found. And her family's position is that, look, this water is not moving. This is stagnant. There's no way her body came all the way down from up on the screen left all the way down to over here. Now, we still don't know where in relation to this, to where we were last night outside in the boat, where exactly this is and where this part meets. But this is deep into this area, this cypress forest that the family walked there. They said that to get there, you had to walk through knee-deep water for 20 to 30 feet. Talked to her friends. They said Mica would not do this. She was wearing her work outfit. None of this makes sense. The family's saying, look, this is evidence that she did not, they believe this is staged. She did not take her life.
We expect to see further action taken. The evidence still shows that it was, at minimum, an unattended death. But how could she be moved so far from the shell casings right after the incident occurred, according to the timeline of the witnesses on the spot?
All right, I know that this has been ruled a death by suicide. You are advocating for the investigation to be reopened. Is that because
Absolutely.
You believe John Paul had something to do with her death?
Well, I'm not going to speak to that directly. I don't have evidence myself or something, and I'm trusting that the authorities involved now are pressing to get all of information and to get any kind of loose ends that can be tied up and get some connection going. There's definitely plenty of evidence that shows that it was not an unintended death.
And in an interview with Fitz News, Anna Francis, like I said, Mica's youngest sister, claimed that Mica was ready to leave JP and be strong. She was ready to do whatever it took. Anna said that JP's control over Mica began when she was a 16-year-old whose life was spiraling out of control. The family started attending JP's church in 2010, but it wasn't long before they began to see his narcissistic behavior on the stage during his sermons. Once again, Anna's words, not mine. So the Francis family decided to switch churches, and it was then that JP made efforts to isolate Mica from the rest of her family by convincing her to live with members of the congregation, like a cult. He also allegedly told Mica that her parents and siblings were not good for her, and they weren't good Christians. And as the years passed, Mica would come and go from their lives depending on what JP was feeling. Anna said, quote, "If you didn't speak positively about John Paul in any way, you were not allowed to be near Mica whatsoever. Brainwashing came up every single week in our family. That word came up every single week. I'm like, how do we fix it? What do we do?" And it came to the point where we didn't even say anything for probably a year. We literally just let her do whatever she was going to do because we couldn't control it anyway. End quote. Anna said that when Mica would tell her husband that she was going to see her brother or sisters, JP would interpret that as Mica getting too much space from him. And I get this because my narcissist, well, I don't want to call him my narcissist anymore. I'm going to call him the narcissist because I don't want to take ownership over him. When the narcissist in my life would hear me say I wanted to do something else, like, oh, I want to go out with friends, or, you know, I want to do this thing, and it didn't include him, instead of him taking that as, you know, I needed time alone, or I needed to put energy and foster my relationships outside of the marriage, he took it as she doesn't want to be with me. He took it as some like direct insult to him, or at least I thought he did. But now I'm kind of seeing that maybe it was just he didn't want me around other people at all, and he wanted to keep me away from other people as much as possible. Anna said that JP would always have a tracker on Mica, one way or the other. At first on her cell phone so that he knew her location at all times, But when Mica left him and got a new phone that he wasn't able to track, JP put a tracker in her car. The same exact thing happened to me. When I realized what this app on my cell phone was doing, and it wasn't just to make sure I was safe, it wasn't to make sure, you could come and get me if anything happened. It was to see where I was at all times. At all times. And then the narcissist would call me or text me and be like, why are you here? What are you doing there? You didn't say you were going to go there. Like, just if I made a stop, like I go to Starbucks, I make a stop. Once I had my dog with me and I was just walking her in a meadow and he was like, why are you there? And it was just ludicrous. So then once I figured that out, once I turned my location off and took the app off and things like that, then he put a tracker in my car. JP would also use control tactics like shutting off Mica's phone, shutting off her credit cards to send her messages of the fact that he was displeased with her, that her behavior wasn't what he expected. And Anna said, quote, he completely can freeze her whole entire life. If she doesn't do what he says, he literally has controlled her whole life from his cell phone, end quote.
Every few months, I witnessed personally one of those things happening where he would just randomly show up out of nowhere. And we're like, where did he come from? And Mike is like, he has a location on my phone. Or we'll just be sitting at lunch and she'll be like, oh my gosh, we had the worst fight today. And why can't we just go through a normal, a healthy relationship? It does have fights, but you get through them. And he always calls someone to mediate their fight and tell them basically that everything bad that Mica had done, and just flipped the script and the story, and Mica was wrong every time.
Did
he would include
use
one of her friends? I mean, Charlotte Korn, the one that's already done some of those, he included her in a lot of text threads, her husband as well, just shaming, basically trying to embarrass Mica and the little fights that they would have, just so that she would stop. Like he's basically ruthless until he gets what he wants. Everyone that knows him, he will send 100 people a text in 5 minutes. Or text the same person 500 texts in 1 minute. Just so that you give in to whatever he's saying for you to do, so you can just get away from the problem.
Just make it stop.
Yeah. I mean, we'll be sitting at lunch and she'll be like, he's threatening to throw all my stuff on the lawn if I don't come home right now. And we'll just be in the middle of lunch. And I'm like, it's a beautiful summer day. Can I just not sit and have lunch with my sister? And no, they got into a fight. So she had to get home that second or all of her belongings were going to be on the lawn.
Oh,
and that's not just one time. That was many times.
And with people like JP, the abuse and the control tactics don't stop when they get left, or even when their target, their victim, is dead. According to Anna, on midnight, the day that Mica was found dead in that park, JP sent a group text to Anna and her family. And the text said, quote, this is what happens when you try to encourage someone to divorce the person they love and tell them they don't need medicine and they're not ill when they are. Good job, Francis family, end quote. In case you thought maybe this text message isn't real, I actually have a picture of this text message and I want to show it to you because I want you to understand how disgusting that is. How disgusting that is for him to say that. Once again, no self-awareness. He thinks he's taking the moral high ground by saying this. He thinks he's right to say this. He doesn't understand that he's an asshole. And I also wanted to show you this because Mica's sister, Sierra, she responded. And her response is perfect. She's not mincing words. She's not beating around the bush. Her sister is gone. And so Sierra said, quote, fuck out of here. You are the reason our sister is dead, end quote. Someone else in the group message also wrote something. They said, quote, it's easy to shift the blame when that's all you know how to do. No one told her not to take her meds. Get that through your thick skull. You drove her crazy. Simple as that. And that surgery that you wanted set her off on this path. How dare you even contact us talking like that? You never deserved her, end quote. Now, that little piece there, that surgery that you wanted set her off on this path. I don't know what this means. I don't know if this is a surgery JP wanted for himself or a surgery he wanted for Mica. I don't know. But like I said, new information's coming out all the time. This case goes so deep. There's so much we don't know and there's so much we don't understand yet. I'm sure we'll figure that out eventually. And if anybody happens to know, let me know in the comment section. So after Mica's death, the Francis family went to the funeral home to see her body, to say goodbye to her. And they were told by JP that they could only say goodbye to Mica if they signed a form agreeing for her body to be cremated. He told them that they would not see her and they would not get her ashes because he was going to find a way to have Mica cremated one way or the other, with or without their permission, with or without their consent.
Our whole family, we went up there and we asked to see her from the owner of the funeral home. And he said, John Paul said no. John Paul says to come back at 12 o'clock. And that's whenever he'll be there. And the funeral home owner told us the complete opposite and said, no, you guys need to come at 2 o'clock whenever he's not even here, because he knows a few days after her passing is when we saw her, I think that Wednesday or Thursday, but it was already all over the news and everything. So he knew the situation. So he was telling us to come at 2. And John Paul was telling us to come at 12. And the funeral home owner was like, no, and hung up the phone immediately. Because we're like, well, John Paul's telling us to come at 12. You're telling us to come at 2. When can we see our sister? And he's like, no, absolutely not. And he hung up the phone real fast and called John Paul and said, stop it. Not only did John Paul try to get us to go there at the same time as him, he was requesting a list of every person that was going to be there to see her. But I thought it was pretty important to tell people that we had, even after she passed, John Paul still had control over her, which is super important.
Yeah.
That even her own family couldn't even see her whenever the funeral, she was in the other room. And legally, like, the funeral home owner was so awesome. He was calling up our lawyer, his lawyer, like, what can I do to let this family see or their daughter, sister? And there was nothing that they could do because John Paul and her were still married, even though they had filed for divorce, separation, everything. And that's what I think that Mica's law is going to do, is to help all of these other victims not still be a victim even after they pass away. So, in saying that, we had to come back. We had to leave and come back. And in order to see her, our parents, per John Paul, our parents had to sign that she would be cremated before we were allowed to see her. So either we don't see her and we don't get her ashes, because he was going to figure out a way to get her cremated anyways, is what he was saying. So either sign it and do it easily so you can see her, or just put up a fight and you don't get to see her anyway. So our parents' hands were tied. It was the hardest thing that my mom said, it was the hardest thing that she's ever done. And her cries, I can still hear her cries in my ears she was just crying for probably 10 to 15 minutes because she didn't even physically have the strength to even sign that paperwork. Before everyone could see her, we were all just sitting in the lobby waiting for my mom to have enough strength to go to the office and sign the paperwork that she was to be cremated.
It's like he's controlling her and torturing you guys.
Absolutely. And that's what he gets pleasure from that. Why else would he do it? Why else would he still put us through this?
Anna and the rest of Mica's family have also openly talked about the investigation and how they're disappointed with the Robeson County Sheriff's Office, because they believe that law enforcement didn't investigate Mica's death as thoroughly as they should have.
And also, no one tells people for a long time now. No one tells people if there was ever a bullet in my head, it was John Paul, it wasn't me. She said those exact words to about 10 to 15 people. And they all were messaging us when everything happened, when the world found out. All these people are messaging us. We don't even know who they are. They're not even connected in any way. They might have known Mica in different period times of her life. And they all said, who do we need to tell this? Do we need to tell the authorities? Who do we go to?
Right.
We sent them in good faith to the investigators at Robeson County. We sent all that stuff to them.
I had 2 separate friends of hers that didn't know each other that I'm aware of tell me the exact same thing. It's
they told us that it was, if they had interviewed everybody that we told them was important on this, that it basically would take too long.
That's disappointing.
They only wanted to interview 2 of our family members. And we also obviously have a big family, but not to mention, did they only enter 2 of our family members? They obviously didn't interview the people that found her belongings, or it's just one thing after another. But they're not handing over her death investigation. From what I was told, the Robeson County has the jurisdiction over it.
Really smart.
Even at the last, even like my brother was saying, whenever you leave, someone like John Paul had left like the tire deflators. Well, there's like a weird name for it. I don't even know what it is. My brother would know, but he left tire deflating devices on her car, on her tires. So whenever a police had asked us, do you think John Paul had threatened Mica in any way, like for her life? And my brother said, absolutely. If someone left a tire deflation device on my car and I'm going 60 miles an hour down the road and one of them goes out, that's a car pileup that could get multiple people injured. And no one took it seriously. All the police that she reported it to, they never took her seriously. They just wrote down what she said. And I believe there might have been pictures on Mica's phone of all the devices, the razors and everything. My brother was actually in the car with Mica whenever one of the PIs that he hired to follow her around was following her around. Just firsthand witnessing. It's not just Mica witnessing this behavior and these allegations against him. It's not just Mica saying it. Our family's witnessed it for years. There's going to be a name. They're petitioning for a law to be named after her for anyone going through anything similar to what she's going through, to be able to have a law backing why this should never happen again. Any kind of signs of all of this duress, the police should be accountable for just brushing her off.
Right.
There's dozens of police reports involving Mica and Paul over these past few, and nothing was ever done because they're married.
I started doing research on after this, because I was like, why was nothing done, and why is this investigation being, why does it look like it doesn't make sense? And
how much time is important. It's super time sensitive, especially for someone like John Paul, who gets things done immediately whenever he knows he's in the wrong or could reap repercussions for what his actions, or any situation where he would be held accountable for what he did. He tries to cover it up as fast as possible. I think our family is so disappointed with the Robeson County Sheriff's Office for not properly doing an investigation. It had all of the signs that someone would have if they did commit suicide, almost too perfectly. And they wanted it. It seems to us, it's our belief that it only took them like a week to get together all the information of John Paul's alibi and where Mica was that day. They didn't interview anybody properly from that site. More and more people are coming out saying that they were there at the scene and they weren't questioned. Nobody, even the kayaker or fisherman that found her belongings, he was talked to for about a few minutes and said, okay, thanks, goodbye. It just came out in a video that when one of the employees from that state park, they saw him leaving in a truck and with his boat behind him whenever he left with Mica's stuff. And when he came to bring it back, he had went to the store and then came back in a different car, like a white car.
And nobody from the police have questioned that.
No one from the police have questioned that. No one even swabbed his hands for any residue, anything. his story from what I've seen on the internet, his story and other people interviewing him, other people are going to interview him other than the police, because everyone's saying what happened that day, right? The same question, what happened that day? The proper interviews just weren't done. The fisherman's story of how he found Mica and what he did that day, from their interviews and everything online, everyone can see it. It's changed 2 or 3 times. There's a lot of people saying that they heard 2 gunshots go off. He's claiming he only heard 1. It's just like all over the place, and the police should have done a better job finding out actually how many people were near her. How did she get found?
Your family went out
saying
to
that the kayaker found her with a log on top of her.
right.
I mean,
your family went out there to where she was found.
Right.
And I've been out there myself. She didn't have any ties to that area that I know of. Did I miss one? Or it's very remote. To me, that the park, that bothered me, the whole drive up there is very remote. Not knowing the area, her making that choice consciously on her own without any influence from anybody was confusing.
The day we saw all their evidence on why they thought it was suicide, they basically showed us snips and clips of things going on and stuff. They even showed us the video of her car at the gas station. Was like, well, she's here about 20 minutes. Do you just want to skip to the next slide? And it was just so quick. They wanted it to just be done with. And it was pretty obvious that they just wanted to get it over with, because they were getting, the day that everyone found out, it seems like the whole world is just in an uproar, because people are finally coming out of the woodwork, and people are finally saying, this is a video I had 20 years ago. And it's just kind of building that case of who his character really is and not who he just pretends to be for 45 minutes on stage. I mean, since the day that we found out, we knew it wasn't her, because she was never mentally unstable before she met him.
And as of now, Mica's sister Sierra has gone to court to petition to pick up where Mica left off in her filings against J.P. Miller. Sierra has applied to be the special administrator of Mica's estate, but the upcoming court battles come along with legal costs, which is why the Francis family has started a GoFundMe, which I will put in the description box. Now, a press conference was held this past week where Mica's lawyer, Regina Ward, who, like I said, has now become the lawyer for the Francis family, spoke extensively about many things related to Mica and her case. Ward announced that some of Mica's belongings, such as her cell phone, purse, and vehicle, are still in the possession of the Robeson County Sheriff's Office. But at that time, all parties involved had reached an agreement that these things would be turned over to the family once the investigation is concluded. But the main topic during the press conference was to introduce Mica's Law, known previously as the Coercive Control Law, which had been sitting in the state legislature Judiciary Committee since 2020. And if it had been in effect at the time of Mica's death, it may have saved her life.
It went to the Judiciary Committee in the House and never went any further. Can't find where it was assigned to anyone or anything. Now let's go back 2.5 years ago. December the 7th, 2021, Senator Katrina Fry Shelley, she introduced into the Senate the Coercive Control Bill. What do you think happened to it? Got referred to the Judiciary Committee. But I need to tell you more about that particularly. And before I do so, let's make sure everyone understands, what is the Coercive Control Bill? Coercive control refers to a pattern of behavior used by one person to dominate, manipulate, and intimidate another within an intimate or familial relationship. It encompasses acts such as assault, threats, humiliation, emotional abuse, and isolation. The goal is to harm, punish, and frighten your victim through fraudulent representations. It often refers to specific types of behavior, The Coercive Control Bill, Senate Bill 927, sitting in the Senate right now, offers a definition for coercive behavior. I have reviewed it. I agree. I am a lawyer, so I have some input on that. I agree with a lot of the things that are listed there, but I think they left out a few. The bill itself, this is called status information. It's about the bill that's in the Senate called coercive control. Interestingly enough, after it was introduced and read in by Senator Shealy, if you look at other bills, what happens a lot of times, other senators or other representatives will jump on board. After it's read, you'll start seeing, when you look through the history of it, it'll say, this particular representative or this particular senator has asked for the bill, for them to be added as a sponsor to the bill. I don't see any other name on there for Senator Shealy. I think part of that has to do with how the public, as well as maybe our legislators, as well as our police department, are not educated to this form of abuse. It is real, people, and it is real damaging.
Regina Ward's 100% correct here, and there needs to be an active law like this in every single state because people, especially women, are falling victim to nefarious, violent, mentally unwell people in every single state, and many states have no protections in place for them. None at all, especially if you're married to that person. Next, Regina Ward called out Senator Luke Rankin, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee.
Now, the interesting thing is back in 2019 and 2020, both of those years, I want to say it was WBTW, did a series on coercive control, emotional abuse, psychological warfare. Also running for re-election, I believe, at the time was Senator Luke Rankin, who, if you'll recall, pointed to his opponent and said he was involved in domestic violence. Seems to me that that was on his mind. Do you know who is in control and who the chairman is of the committee on the Judiciary in the Senate? Luke Rankin. He has the ability to assign this bill to a subcommittee. He has the ability, if he wanted to put it on his agenda and walk it all the way through and make sure it gets done. This bill has been put in a folder in a dust-covered box in a back corner of the closet in the Judiciary Committee's office. I challenged them to go back there and find it and bring it out and assign a committee to it. Let's get this done. It is important. It is extremely important.
And I bring it back to a comment I made right before this clip, but what Regina says here about coercive control in marriages and how law enforcement and the judicial system reacts to that is spot on. And it's unfortunate and it's scary. And you wonder why marriage rates are dropping and why people don't trust each other anymore. It's because you marry one person and you end up realizing years later that was not the person you married, and now it's impossible to get out and no one will help you because, well, that's your husband. That's your husband after all. He can just take your car after he's committed you to a mental facility and then you go to pick your car up so you can finally go home and it's gone. He can just take that because he's your husband. He can torture you, harass you, stalk you. He's your husband. Why not? Why not? So Regina Ward lists off items that would fall under Mica's law.
You know, the interesting thing here is when people are married and the police are called to a domestic situation, usually what happens is they're told by the police officers, because this is what they get to go to, is, ma'am, sir, this sounds like a domestic issue. You need to go see a family court lawyer or you need to go file something in family court. Well, the first thing that a coercive control abuser does is take away your money, take away your transportation, and your way of communication, and the friends that support you. How are you going to get there? How are you going to pay for it?
The physical abuse that doesn't leave marks part really hit me, even though sometimes people like JP, people, narcissists, they do leave marks, but they still deny that they were the ones to do it to you. They'll say they do not remember that happening at all. That did not happen at all. What are you talking about? You're crazy. And if you've been the victim of coercive control, you're very familiar with all of the things Regina Ward said. And you probably wish you weren't. You definitely wish you weren't. Isolation from friends and family to deprive you of a support system. Deprivation of basic needs, love, intimacy, support, emotional support. Stalking and tracking whereabouts so your abuser can know where you are all the time and he can let you know that he knows where you are and what you're doing at all times. There's no escape. He'll find you. Financial abuse, making sure you can't hire a lawyer, can't rent a new place to live, threats to yourself, your children, your pets, threats to reveal or publish private information, and this is a big one. The controlling, abusive narcissist will spend your entire relationship getting you to reveal your deepest, darkest secrets, tell them things that you would never tell another soul. Talk about things you've done in your past that now in a different season of your life you regret and hold shame over. And then when the cards are down and you finally gain the courage and the strength to leave, they'll pull out their dossier on you. They'll tell you that everyone is going to see you for who you really are, and they'll even attach some moral value to this, as if they're doing you and the world a favor by laying you bare in public. Now you can finally get the help you need. Now when everyone sees you for who you are, hopefully it makes you get the help you need. Now, at this time, Mica's family does not seem to be alleging that J.P. Miller directly caused Mica's death, and I believe there's specific reasons for why they're being careful with their words. But Regina Ward did say, quote, "We do not know if Mica took her life simply because she was manic or whether she possibly died as a way to escape the alleged abuse. In journals and writings from Mica, she alleged that her husband, Pastor John Paul Miller, emotionally abused her and abused her physically, spiritually, financially, and sexually. According to Mica, Mr. Miller began this process by isolating her from her family and friends, removed her name from his bank accounts, took her cell phone, which deprived her of contact numbers and a way to call, stole her car and hid it from her, repeatedly put her down, degraded her, threatened to reveal and did reveal private information and semi-nude photos of her, had her investigated for false crimes, and misused the legal process to have her committed for mental evaluations. Some believe that Mica took her own life as a result of those alleged abuses," end quote. And I'm going to have to be honest. Having been through it all in my past and never before having been a person who ever thought that I would consider taking my own life, there were many points in the relationship with a narcissist that I felt dying would be easier than living. Dying would be easier than living through what I woke up to every single day. And in rare moments, I felt like dying would have been an actual relief, an escape from the constant stress and pain and hurt and fear and confusion. Okay, so I wanted to look it up and see if there was anything new in the Mica Miller case since I looked yesterday. And it looks like Senator Luke Rankin, he's a little upset about the Mica Miller press conference. He's a little upset about what Regina Ward said. He feels called out. He said that he was shocked and saddened to see that Mica had died and that her life was cut far too short and, now the authorities can investigate. And then he said, quote, "Disappointingly, yesterday, the family law attorney who represented Mica before her tragic death chose to use Mica's death to take a political cheap shot at me. For the record, there is no such bill pending before the House or Senate Judiciary Committee, and no bill has been introduced by any member of the House or Senate since 2021, end quote. I don't know who's telling the truth. Is there a bill like that? Is there not a bill like that? He's a politician, so I'm going to go ahead and assume he's kind of living in the gray area right now, calculated and conveniently saying it in a way where he's not lying, but it's also not the truth. But what does that even mean? There should be a bill like that. There should be a bill like that. There should be a law like that. And if there's not, why don't you stop complaining about how you're triggered and go and make one? Go and introduce one. Go and do your job. So Regina Ward also posted something on Facebook saying, quote, "What this family wants you to do is help. We want the coercive control bill to be looked at, taken seriously, put some time into it. Somebody make an amendment to call it Mica's Law. Getting this law in the books will help." And Luke Rankin responded saying, quote, "No law enforcement, victims advocate, family court judge, or family law attorney, including Miss Ward, has ever asked me to help make this bill a law. The statement or suggestion made otherwise is completely false. While I always seek ways to strengthen South Carolina laws to protect the innocent, I realize for a bill to become law, it requires action by the majority of the House, Senate, and the governor. I stand ready to help continue to make South Carolina and our community the place so many love to call home." Such a freaking stupid political response. I look forward to helping South Carolina be a place that so many want to call home. Like, so stupid. Why instead wouldn't you reply, okay, you're right, Regina Ward, let's not argue over if this bill exists, when it existed, who's supporting it, who's talking about it. Instead, let's just work together and make it a reality. Because you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Women need protection against their partners when their partners are coercive, controlling, narcissistic pieces of shit. They need help. They need protection. There needs to be laws in place to protect these people. Now, News 13 reported that legislation filed 4 years ago would have criminalized coercive control and established punishments of up to 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Since then, efforts to get such a law in the books have stalled in both chambers and the General Assembly. And why have they stalled? Why? It's a perfectly good law, and it's necessary in today's world. So it also looks like the agreement made between Mica's family, Regina Ward, the police, as well as J.P. Miller includes several restraining orders. And Regina Ward said, quote, "In this particular case, the restraining order is basically saying that the parties are mutually restrained from contacting one another. Communications will be handled through the attorney's office, so there's no need for any direct communication. We're also on a mutual restraint to not go into the area of a personal residence or where they work. They are to turn around and leave if the other person is there," end quote. And that's great, because this means JP can't contact the Francis family. He can't harass them. And that's really what Mica should have had when she was alive. Regina Ward also did tell News Nation that they are considering filing a wrongful death lawsuit against John Paul Miller. Now, at the end of the day, what do I believe? What's my opinion? I believe that Pastor John Paul Miller is responsible for Mica's death, whether directly or indirectly. I couldn't say yet. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that it is my belief, 100%, that if Mica had never met JP, she would still be alive today. She would still be with her family today, and he has to face some sort of accountability for that. You cannot just harass and torture people and try to control their lives when they're with you and when they're not with you. You cannot stalk someone, track their location, try to do things to cause chaos in their lives and cause stress in their lives so that you make sure they never have a happy moment just because they don't want to be with you anymore. You cannot do that. And so many people do. But before we go into Stephanie's Small Business Showcase, I have to briefly touch on the conspiracy theories surrounding this case. And I only want to talk about it a little bit because I don't really believe them. And I don't really want to perpetuate it too much, but I can't not talk about it. So many people ask the question of, why was Mica wearing her work clothes when she was at the pawn shop buying the gun? If she knew she was going to kill herself, why would she get dressed for a shift that she knew she was never going to go to? Why would she want to die in her work clothes? And a lot of people ask, why would she put gas in her car? Why would she be making plans with her friend the night before for the following Sunday? Why would she be making plans to pay her car payment? Why would she be doing any of these things, right? And there's conspiracy theories or theories that JP was with Mica when she died, or someone he knew was with her when she died. And some people believe that JP may have lured Mica to meet with him before she went into work. And that's why it took a while for her to get from the pawn shop to Lumber River State Park when it shouldn't have taken that long. To take it one step further, a lot of people wonder if AI was used somehow. So there's people that say in the pawn shop when she's buying the gun, Mica does not look like herself. It looks like somebody else who kind of looks like Mica, but it doesn't exactly have her specific features, so you can tell it's not her. And a lot of people think that the 911 call was created with AI. A YouTuber, Robbie Harvey, had done an entire video about this, about how you could use AI to recreate Mica's voice. He did that himself, and it was very, very close to the real 911 call. Robbie Harvey also had an interview with a retired FBI agent, or somebody who claims he's a retired FBI agent, and this person said, quote, "All the allegations in the Mica Miller case that AI was used to call 911 have to be taken seriously at this point. I did not realize how advanced this stuff and how scary this stuff is getting," end quote. Mica Miller's father, Michael Francis, has said there's multiple shell casings found at the scene. There was a live round found. It didn't make much sense. She only had one bullet in her head. Michael Francis also says that a full toxicology panel was never ordered on Mica after her death, that they did a blood alcohol test, but they didn't test for other substances, and the family's devastated about this because JP rushed the cremation process. So there's a lot of people that are just saying that wasn't Mica at all at the gun store, that wasn't Mica at all on the 911 call, based on the fact that there was all of these shell casings and she only had one bullet in her head, based on the fact that her belongings were found several yards away from where her body was found, based on the fact that there were reports that somebody heard 2 gunshots instead of 1. there was a lot of things that weren't adding up. However, I can't speculate too much on that, and I can't even say how possible it is. What I can say is, knowing someone like JP Miller, I don't think anything would be impossible for him. I don't think he would think anything was out of the realm of possibility. And I wouldn't put it past him to orchestrate something like this, but I have no evidence or proof that he did it. And when you get into the AI thing, and, you know, it's kind of scary and it's kind of like sci-fi, but AI has reached a point where you can, even in video, make somebody look like somebody else. So is it that difficult to make somebody sound like someone else? And you might say, well, you know, Mica was responding to the 911 dispatcher's questions. You can do that too. A lot of these telemarketing calls you get where you think they're real people, you're not talking to a real person. And sometimes you can see that in their response. But there were large pauses in Mica's 911 conversation. When the dispatcher would ask a question, there was, you know, a lengthy pause. I cut it out when I played you the clip because it just made it shorter, but there were lengthy pauses. I don't know how much I believe it. I'm not putting it out of my mind, though. I'm not saying like that's impossible and that's ridiculous. Nothing's ridiculous anymore. And if anybody would be capable of thinking they could pull something like that off, it would be JP Miller. So before we go, we have to dive into Stephanie's Small Business Showcase, and today's small business comes to us from Jewel Laredo of Pollinator Chocolate. She says they make their own chocolate from cocoa beans and then create delicious chocolate bars, bonbons, and truffles with it. Jewel is the chocolatier at Pollinator Chocolate, and all of the chocolate is ethically sourced, and the beans come from importers that guarantee their farmers a living wage and do not employ any form of slave or child labor. They sell their chocolate through their website online, which I've included in the description box, but they also have a physical location in the mountains of Colorado, located in the heart of Carbondale. It's called the Cocoa Club, and not only can you get delicious beverages, some spiked and some not, but you can also try their amazing chocolate as well as sandwiches and burritos. They produce their wares on site, so you can actually watch them make the chocolate, and they also have live music. I gotta tell you, the bonbons and the truffles look so delicious. They look so delicious. I love chocolate, but they also look cool, unique, artsy. They got swirls of colors, interesting looking designs. They would make a beautiful gift for a chocolate lover like me. I was drawn initially to the mint chocolate bonbons because my favorite color is green, but also because the combo of mint and chocolate is second only to the combo of peanut butter and chocolate. And they look so good. I want them. I want the hazelnut ones too. But anyways, when we talk about the chocolate bars, these are not your mother's chocolate bars. Even the bars look like beautiful works of art that you wouldn't want to eat unless they were as delicious as they actually are. They do tasting sessions at the Cocoa Club, and I'm heavily considering taking a little trip to Colorado just to gorge myself on their chocolates. So go check out Pollinator Chocolate. I've linked their website and social media in the description box. Show your support for Jewel and the rest of the crew over there. Tell them we support them and appreciate them and how they make the world a better place with chocolate. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comment section what you think about Mica Miller's case, what you think about JP Miller, and do you think a coercive control law should exist in every single state? What do you think about that? And should we start really coming together as a community and making a bunch of noise in our respective states to make sure that bills like this pass and laws like this come into effect? Thank you so much for being here once again. Until next time, stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe, and I love you so much. Bye.
Straight down, and that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. All these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name, better say I Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly. So you got to let it go. I got blood on the strings.